What's up, audience? Welcome back. Uh, Hope you're doing good. This one, I want to talk about justice and the concept of justice and what that is. And often, when people talk about justice, they mean vengeance, revenge, making things fair and equal, and that type of thing. Uh, I'm not talking about this justice, even though I'm going to talk about all these other perspectives of justice as well. And why do I want to talk about this? Because I mean, this is for a man, that's a like most important facets of life, and how to play this game of life, uh, like a you know I don't want to say real gangster because there's other connotations with that, but um, you know real man, let's just say. Okay. um, Justice, right? I also want to contrast with this idea of which obviously I don't agree with, and there's been like a lot of bad directions that men have taken. On one side, they have taken the mafia mentality and say like, no, that's the way. This is how, you know, you play the game of life. That's not the way, and I'll tell you why. It's still not the real game. um and the other side is just, oh, let go and we'll go with the flow, just the universe and everything's gonna be all right, also not okay. There's something else that is in between of those two. That's what I would call justice or wisdom, which is a state of consciousness, out of which the right ideas, the right concepts, the right thoughts even stem from, on how to play this game of life. It does require courage, and it does require a certain degree of surrender. And I'll tell you why it requires courage, and of course, with courage comes alchemy and all these other things. And you got to access that state of consciousness. It is not freely given. That does not come by default. Innocence and confidence, these are two energies that come by just, may come by default, even though they're very fragile and not stable in the game of Matrix. But the game of Matrix is not the game of life. That's why I want to distinguish those two. The winner of the game of Matrix is the loser in the game of life. That's very important to understand. Um, and so there's this idea that for the man to be successful, he has to be a monster, right? There's another, much maybe more difficult, but there's of course there's completely another way of how to be masculine in the right way and not be weak, like another direction that men sometimes take by listening to these old fart gurus who just basically teach people how to be, disengaged from life or whatever, this renunciation, because then they get followers, get money, like get this. It's just another Matrix game. And you see these spiritual new age men, and then you see this, like, where is this man? Where there is a man there somewhere, but I just don't see it. Another side, they go into like uh, mafia mentality, right? So it's either like this neutered spiritual noodle man, or this monster mafia mentality guy. And so there's men think that that's just like two ways that you can, uh, you know, live. But there's another way, And after considering and watching behaviors and observing and really digging deep on what is real masculine, real masculinity, I can contrast with other types of approach. For example, mafia mentality, right? The mafia boss mentality. Now, the approach is this: uh, you have to maintain reputation. That's the most important thing for the mafia mentality, is to maintain reputation. And that reputation usually is around people need to be afraid through the reputation, so then they are basically out of fear of repercussions, they are how to say, lenient, or don't fuck with that man, right? So there's one approach, out of fear. And they usually what they need to do is, of course, reputation is not something that is tangible, right? It's not, but its reputation is ego. And so by trying to maintain the reputation, you're trying to, for this entity to kind of survive that is not really there. It's just like a virtual kind of thing. So everything revolves around fear with this type of reputation, right? And so then people think that, okay, if the man is feared, then the man is strong. And no, I tell you why. Because with this idea of needing to protect the survival of the idea, which is reputation, you actually endanger the physical body and your physical safety. You actually endanger it. So that is not strong. That is, I mean, I'm not saying anything new here, but that is not real masculine. That is endangering your family, your body. The bodies are endangered in order to protect the idea, right? Because yes, that idea of fear me because I don't fuck around works on some people, and other people, and some people may say, uh, don't agree with that, right? Fuck you. So even though you may want to try to keep the reputation of fairness and justice out of fear, and for example, you just want to trade with people and do business and whatever, and everything has to be fair and in order, and nobody needs to fuck with that order. If they fuck with that order, then there's repercussions, and there may be fatal repercussions like losing life. So then other people are afraid of being afraid of it, right? So that's the game. In order to maintain that order, that order is nothing. They may not mean nothing. May not be anything wrong with that order, right? Because like the mafia boss just wants order. It doesn't want to see, that's that, like, honorable part is like wants order and something that is fair, and don't fuck with anything that is decided to be fair. If you try to, you know go outside of that order, then there are repercussions. But that's the gist of, like, you know like a mafia boss and being a complete jackass and being reckless, idiot, or just like a beast. There are difference. There's certain type of maturity there in a mafia boss mentality, which is which has a sense of order. This is why, like, you see, Italian mafia had a certain type of order, and that order had to be followed. Anybody breaks that order, fatal consequences. But that order was imposed by the morals. They had to follow it out of fear. I also have to say something in detail. This idea, for example, this racketeering, this idea that that later, for example, in America and maybe other countries, it was like you got to pay the money for the protection, you know. And but that how worked in Sicilia and maybe other parts of Italy as a natural order of things. It worked there as an insurance, like, because in the old days there was no insurance, right? So there was this type of cultural insurance. There's like one man with the power who has, there was no army, nothing, right? So they had to order some life to have some order, and they had to have that order, maintain that order. And so therefore there was a person who was uh, boss, don, whatever you want to call it, that is in charge of protecting that order. And in order to protect that order, he was getting paid, and he was getting paid by the people who just doing the regular work, paying the insurance money. That's pretty much how it worked. And in these particular times, it was a functional order, right? If anybody tries to fuck with the protected land, of course there are consequences, and so nobody fucked. They had a really good order. Okay, for that time it worked. Then, of course, when there was this idea to impose this order in United States, it worked for some time, but it obviously did not work for a long term, because that's a different order over there, and this is why it can't survive for long. But then you can have a nice run, but it's just not sustainable. And plus, it's a type of it's an ego game. Okay, still Matrix game. So let's just talk about the other side. So in this type of approach, there's a lot of vengeance mentality, revenge, and I want to differentiate that from justice. Justice is not like that. Okay. For example, if you're doing business with somebody, whatever that may be, and they are trying to fuck you over, or they have, right? Now you may have people around you that you're doing business with, but they're just not playing the game fair. They try to cheat at it, right? Now, one approach is this mafia boss, and then pressure them for the money, whatever, use fear, all that stuff, right? But there's another approach, is instead of playing that game, which it always leads to this gangster mentality, and which is not a real solution, and which is not a real safety and security. The other way is to cut your losses and protect your economy. This way, okay? If somebody did not play by the agreed rules and stole, lied, cheated, whatever, that person is cut out from your game. You cut that person out. You give one chance. So I always do give one chance. Okay, you're trying to fuck me over. Whatever. We agreed something. You failed at this, or like you betrayed me, or whatever. I'll talk to you and I'll tell you, what's up with this shit. Make it right. And if a person doubles down on their bullshit, then they're out of my game. They're not allowed to participate in my game, because I don't play this. That my order and my economy is not like that. They're out of it. They do not get to play my game. And with time, all that energy that you would use to try to knock that money back, or whatever, that convince that person to do the right thing, you keep that energy in protecting your own assets, your own economy, but protecting it well and in a strong way. It is not a only when somebody is trying to like steal from you, like in this manner directly, there only then there may be fatal consequences. Okay, not in a like, okay, that person is not paying me back, he's playing it unfair, so now I'm gonna hunt him down or whatever. Instead, you cut that person out of this out of your game and protect all your game assets as much as you can, with a, if it's necessary, but only if it's necessary, with the fatal force. Okay, because when you are playing your economy bubble, it has to be protected. No one can come and play that unfair thing or steal. They can't. If they do it, then they are risking and with fatal consequences. You see, but you're not going out there and telling everybody how they're supposed to play and enforcing that rule. You're protecting your own economy bubble, using the same strength and resources that you would do try to get everybody to get in line. It's not the same type of approach. That is real strength and power, but it requires something. Every time you cut people off like that, uh, you may find that fewer and fewer people are around you. That's the first thing. And more, you have to have your own dependencies on things. You are basically pushed in becoming sovereign, and not just on the resources outside of you, energetically as well. Okay. Speaking from this matrix mentality, for example, the tough love is when somebody is not playing by the rules or like doubling down on their ego. You cut them out from your reality, and there might be some sort of energetic process that you may need to go through. Alchemy. You alchemize that, and so you cut them out from your reality on an energetic level. They don't have access to you on any kind of emotional buttons either. And that is what you discover within yourself is justice. Now, what really happens to the people who were not playing fair and doubling down on their ego, now they're cut off from the resources, at least from your own attention or your own energy. And that is the biggest blow that you can make on a person, because killing a person is not really resolving any problem, because that ego must be dissolved in some way. And so when a person is doubling down on it, you have to let it be them be with their own ego. And that is the best punishment, not in the sense that you are like punishing just to get the revenge, because that is usually short lived and it's not really satisfying. But justice is a continuous state of consciousness that you have with you. And the person is left with their own ego, which feels really bad, and now they have to deal with it. And why is it the best punishment? Because this punishment gives a chance to a person to liberate themselves from that bullshit. They need to see the feedback of what it is like to make those choices of the ego, in order to see that it leads to hell. And when they are in hell, then then they may try to um, um, set things right with God, so to speak, right? But you see, that's a tough love, and that's a real justice, because your real intent is not to revenge and fuck somebody over because they fucked you. Your real intent is to end this forever, to have that person not to function on the ego mentality ever. And so that's a gift to that person, even though they chose to go through hell way, if it's not necessary. But some people are insisting on the ego, so it's a welcome to hell. In a way, you kind of send them to hell this way. And so this way, there's another way. Your economy and your livelihood is going to be much more secure, because now these types of uh, people that function on the ego are not part of your game. You know, you still protect your area. If they ever come for more, then you zap the fuck out of them, and and that's it. And you still protect, and you continue. Now your economy is becoming stronger, more sustainable, and you're working with the people who are part of it and wants to play the game in this way. You see, by letting go of the reputation, you gain the sense of justice, which is the feeling, which feels amazing. And your reputation may be whatever that may be. It doesn't matter, because it's not real. But how you feel is real. Okay? So if you feel amazing and everything's going amazing, and you know how to handle your shit, and you feel strong, and you got good stuff going for you, reputation does not matter. You kind of have to let that shit go. Because energy is everything. You can't lie with energy. See, this is why, like, there's this world of thoughts, and so there's this battle of ideas, and it's like, that's ego game. But the energy is just energy. That's how it feels. And so these thoughts that are battling with each other, they're looking for a resolution and get a little bit of taste of that energy. But they like, if they win, they get a little jolt, and then back to the same, trying to prove their point again, insisting on their crooked ways or whatever. Um, but the justice as being a state of consciousness, which is this equilibrium inside that you feel, and it's weakest to strongest, because your bodily safety is very high, your economical safety is very high, even though you may have like your own little bubble, economical bubble that is going on. You're not participating in a matrix, but you don't need that, because you don't need that social validation. You got your own people going, that is more than enough. You're playing the game of life, but you're not playing the game of matrix. Okay? And there, of course, there's order. The way you run your house, the way you run your business deal, there's order. But anybody who's participating in that is, if they just break that order, they're out of the game. And nobody wants to be like anybody with the two neurons connected. Nobody wants to be out of this game, which feels amazing, which is cultivating peace and bliss. Because the final product is this: is the feelings. So if you're out of this game of paradise, it's you go into hell. That's basically the outcome of it. So you see, but you can have like a voluntary direction in saying like, okay, I want to play the game of life, right? And so there's this voluntary, which what it is, it's a type of, like, you can call it even the rite of passage. Like if you're functioning in the matrix, in order for you to get out of it or become like immune of it, whatever you wanted to call it, but there is this self-liberation process that takes place. And you know, I sometimes, like, for example, men would say like, well, I'm not a subject to anything, I'm my own man. Yet they're functioning from the ego, so they are the subject to the ego, which is matrix, and so they are basically a bitch of matrix, and they're completely controlled by it. That's not freedom. That's not real man. um doesn't matter if you say that you're not a subject. You are a subject because of who's running you, right? So, but to be free from it, there's a type of rite of passage that you have to go through, um, where you become sovereign, your own sovereign being. And then you're really free. Then you're not a subject of anything. Um, you're just, I suppose, well, yeah, if you're not a subject of anything, then all your reality, or majority of your reality, is becoming subjective. Even the objective reality is a consequence of your subjective reality. And that's why you're free. And that's what I've been talking about for I don't know how long, of how to access that state of consciousness, which is always challenged, or at the beginning is challenged. And it seems to be that as time goes by, it's getting challenged based on astrological calendar. And every time it's challenged, you have to defend your throne, so to speak. I'm just using these words, but you have to remain in that peaceful and blissful background every time it's challenged. And the challenges come like, you know, maybe something to do with your life, uh, which is also just like a clockwork. It's all timed. Because sometimes you may wake up one day and you don't know why you're trying, kind of almost losing your shit. Everything was fine yesterday, and now for no reason that's going on. It's time. Uh, that's all. And then you do your stuff. You do your alchemy. You get back to the 0 point again, and you alchemize that thing. And there's a permanent change when you do that. Okay, and that's how to be a real man and defend your justice. You have to protect your resources. You have to protect your economy. And that's how you do it. And anybody who is participating in it knows what it costs and knows what kind of direction they're living. They have to be either well, not everybody is an alchemist, but some people may choose and say like, no, I want to participate to this order. I want to participate in this order. You may not be alchemist, but this order is producing good feelings. It's fun to play this game. I want to participate with these guys because it's fun to play the game, and I have no need or necessity to cheat. And if I do, I'll be out of this game. And so that's the way the cookie crumbles. I hope I communicated the difference between revenge and justice. Because, like I say, you always need to give people a chance. Like, if they made a mistake, everybody makes a mistake, right? But then when there's a chance and there's an opportunity to admit that, like, okay, I can see now. See, this is a very important part. Now, if the person can look at it and say, okay, yeah, I've acted from this bullshit state. I did something that was kind of fucked up. Maybe I even acted not consciously, it was just automatic because I thought that's how it works, whatever. But now that I see it, I don't want this to be part of me. And I take responsibility for this. It's not my fault that it happened, because you can say, well, I've been programmed, whatever. But once you see it, then it becomes your responsibility. And if a person looks at it and says, like, yeah, that was not right, apologizes, and whatever the process that feels, because it may not feel good when you have to look at it, right? Your own shit. But if you are a man enough, you're going to look at it, you're going to feel whatever there is to feel, and going to take it and live through that feeling that may not be comfortable. And then once that feeling is dissolved, that's the only way you could let go of your ego, that particular thing. And if that process takes place of your, like, that negative feeling or that incoherent feeling, and you looked at it and you went all the way and it just dissolved, then it's really gone. Because if you have not, then that's the real meaning of apology. It's not just saying words, because that means shit, Sometimes we are trained to say words and think like, oh, just say words, it's going to be all right. And then you go back in the same fucking shit again. There's this alchemical, energetic process that takes place for you to really take that thing, that, that negative, incoherent feeling, dissolve it, and you're not going to do this shit ever again. It's permanently changed. So you give people opportunity to go through this process, but like I said, not many people choose it. A lot of people choose, at least in my experience, to double down on their ego. Now when they do that, there's nothing you can do. What can you do? Forced it? No. It's just, again, playing like gangster game. Say, okay, all right, you want to play like that? Fair enough. Enjoy the Matrix games, because you know where it's going to lead. And even if you want some justice, that is the best justice. Cutting that person off from your good energy is justice. You see. And in fact, this is probably because they relied on your energy. They're going to go on a fast track to that downward spiral, or these tower moments, as they say. And hopefully they're gonna go through that, and they do. Hopefully they pick the right choices, and they will wake the fuck up, and you'll see that, like, they were what the fuck they were doing, and they become aware and conscious. And if that happens, then okay, then that person is kind of welcome back to the club. Cheers. Glad to have you back, because whatever the fuck that was just not cool. Okay? So that's the masculine approach to playing the game of life. It's just keeping the focus of where it needs to be, and understanding of what is true power and what is true confidence, and understanding of why you're playing this game, and what's the resource, like what's the idea, why are you doing this, right? And why the reason when what you're doing is for the feelings. And if you live life and you have most of your life is in these amazing feelings, and you have good stuff going, your economy is good, everything's going great, you're winning in the game of life. Because in the Mario game, when there's that touch these coins, that's these feelings. But you're not really hooked on anything anymore. You're not depending on it. Like, your life becomes these good feelings. what they wouldn't do, these players of Matrix, to have that. In the end, they may have millions of dollars and could not understand why they're suffering so much, and they would be willing to just give away all their wealth for that sense of peace and bliss for no reason whatsoever. So that's the real value. And that's why we play this game of life. And you need wealth in your life. You need abundance in your life. You need art in your life. You need beauty in your life. You need all of those things. It's fun, but it's not difficult to have that because your access of value is not the money, but wealth. And that's very different. Uh, Money may participate there, in that, but you are always building wealth, not the money, right? This is why money to me is not the money, it's not the security. It's like, oh, there's a lot of money. So it's like, okay, uh, what kind of experience can that create? And can that make more value? So there's more money coming in, and then that makes more value. And see what I'm trying to say. Because I'm interested in wealth. And if I have a lifestyle where everything works on the exchange, like almost barter, right? The money may still be there, but they kind of cancel each other out, and then you see like, wait a second, if we could just take the money out, because you do this for me, I do that for you, and then the money is almost like just the math. It's not really, because we are in the barter situation, right? And it's just to calculate things. That's what the money is needed. But you realize that like, oh, you're wealthy not because of the money. Because if the money gone right now, you can still exchange with that person and do the math in whatever with your imaginary. And it's just like, what's the value that I'm getting from you? What's the value getting from me? That cancels each other out or whatnot, and there's a barter situation going on, and you still have wealth in your life, but very little money. Okay. And that's how you can live a billionaire lifestyle and technically live, you know technically, you know you can live as a, you know what I'm saying, when you're anyway. I babble now. Enough. All right, that's enough. That's my take on justice. That's my take on how to play the game of life as a man, and not as a dick. It does require you to let go of a lot of things, but you do get that feeling of justice, and that cannot be replaced. It's a feeling of balance. It's a feeling of everything is sustainable and permanent, and it's running. It has its own economy. It's like you become your sovereign economy. And you cannot compare that with vengeance and revenge. All right, guys. Peace. See you in the next one.